Yeah, I mean, one of the tactics is if you speak out against Antifa, then you're accused of being sympathetic to the far right or carrying water for the far right. That's what I'm accused of. It's part of the strategy, and it works, unfortunately, in silencing people, in making certain people seem like they're untouchable. This movement lies a lot. What's been really eye-opening for me is, I mean, it's one thing to tell like half-truths, right, or to put a spin on stuff, but a lot of these activist leaders have no problem outright just making up wholesale lies about their political opponents. Very bizarre stuff has come out smearing me as the story became big.
So were you shocked? I still don't want to gloss over exactly what happened to you and what it was like that day, so we'll get back to that, but were you shocked at the way the media treated you after? That basically what I saw happen was you got support mostly from people on the right, you know, conservatives and libertarians, but that basically all of the rest of the mainstream media, whatever it is, like the Brian Stelters of the world and the CNNs and the rest of it, they had to be guilted into even putting you on. And when they did put you on their shows, Stelter didn't put you on, but he did reference it at the end of his show in the quickest, sort of most ridiculous way. But CNN did put you on their morning show, which I think it was because we all sort of guilted them into it. Everyone was saying, is CNN going to cover this? Where's the New York Times? And it was like they waited and waited and waited, and then eventually had to do it, or eventually acquiesced because they didn't want to look totally ridiculous, or the New York Times, which wrote a ridiculous piece about you, that they all framed you as conservative, as if that was their way of kind of winking, like, this is kind of okay, he's conservative. Do you consider yourself conservative? Are you conservative? I actually don't, I know you fairly well, but I don't know any of your political beliefs, but I thought that that tactic by them, and the fact that it ran across everything, he's conservative, kind of okay.
The media reaction to what happened to me took on a life of its own that I wasn't expecting. It was disappointing to see it framed as a partisan story, because it really wasn't. It doesn't, I mean, this is a press freedom issue. No journalist, or no citizen, no human, regardless of his or her views, covering at a public demonstration should be met with that type of reaction from people. And I didn't really understand quite so much why so much media needed to always qualify that I was a conservative. They perceived me as a conservative journalist.
The New York Times, rather, went even further because I screenshot a portion of the article. Their implication was that you were asking for it, really, that you go into these things trying to rile it up, and then that you then try to raise money off it. That was really the implication of the New York Times story.
There are some stories that refer to me as provocateur, or that I have a history of skirmishes and clashes with Antifa, which is, that language makes it seem as if like I go in to fight people and then like I have a history of fighting with them, which is absolutely untrue. They've always targeted me with them going on the offensive. Every attack that I've endured and suffered has been completely unprovoked, and for them, and this is what it means. It comes back to how how Antifa defines self-defense. So self-defense for them is not protecting yourself when somebody is violently attacking you. It's that my ideas are an attack on them, a form of violence. It goes to people who argue words are violence, right? So they, in their ideology, believe that I committed violence towards them through my writings and my views. Therefore, they are justified in going after me to protect themselves. It's sick, it's twisted. As for CNN, I appreciate that they invited me on. They were the only center-left broadcasts to invite me on. And I wonder if it has to do with the fact that several of their TV hosts have said very positive things about Antifa and excusing the violence.
Can you mention them? I mean, I'll do it if you don't want to do it, but I think it's worth mentioning.
Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo
have said positive things about Antifa. Cuomo, there's a ridiculous quote of his just in the last month or two. What do you make of that? I mean, what do you make of that? These are supposed I know Don. I mean, what do you make of these people saying these things? These are primetime CNN anchors saying positive things about what in essence is a domestic terrorist group.
These are people who I believe are saying this stuff out of ignorance. You know, they're from an elite class of media and they work in New York City or DC. They don't experience or witness the street brutality of this movement. So their conception of Antifa is, they bought into the propaganda, so it's more theoretical. Oh, these are people who are anti-fascists, they're opposing neo-Nazis. So while I don't support violence, I think their cause is justified. Mm-hmm. We hear a lot of that over and over. And what people need to be aware about Antifa is they're not just against the far-right neo-Nazis, they're against liberal democracy. They're against the concept of the nation state, which is why they've worked so hard to delegitimize the police, attack the rule of law. It's all towards their goal of, they attack border enforcement, ICE and all that. It's not just, and they're against liberal democracy as well. I need to nail that down. Yeah. So you think that they might not be going after you now because you share a common political opponent, let's say the right or the far right. But the thing that, moderate leftists, moderate Democrats believe in and cherish, Antifa opposes as well.
And that's what I've been trying to explain to people, not just related to Antifa, but what's going on with the more radical elements of the left, is that you guys think if you just don't talk about them, that it buys you a little more time. But actually they're going to come for you too, because eventually a moderate lefty is going to have an original thought that is against the woke thing. And I think that's what it is. You're not woke. You're not a far left progressive. So then the only way that the media can frame you is as a conservative. I mean, do you consider yourself conservative? I know this is a sidebar in a weird way, but watching it happen across the media, where everyone, I even brought it up, even on Fox, they called you a conservative on a thing that I did, on a segment that I did. And I made a point of saying that I know you, and I don't know you to be a conservative. I've never heard you say that. I don't know all your political beliefs. When Fox was doing it, I think it was to signal to their audience, this guy's kind of one of us. But when the lefty media does it, they're doing it because they want to go, oh, it's kind of excused because he's one of them. So everyone does it for their own sort of purposes. But what do you even consider yourself politically, even though that's actually, it's completely irrelevant in a certain regard, other than they've made it an issue?
My work is out there on record. So however people want to label me, fine, go ahead. But I've written and do work for very mainstream places. I mean, I went from being a student journalist to contributing to the Wall Street Journal, the National Review, the Spectator, American Spectator, and the New York Post. The video content I produce has been provided to the Washington Post, to Reuters. So however people want to fix a label to me for their own political agenda, they do their own thing. I don't identify myself in that way so much, but I will talk about my lived experience, to use the language of progressives a bit. Yeah. I think my critical coverage of Antifa and other far-left militant movements is informed by my family's background. My parents were refugees to the United States from Vietnam, and they actually lived through a Marxist revolution. They were from the South, and they experienced life after the country reunified as a communist state, and they faced so much persecution. My mother and her family happened to belong to the wrong class, right? So they had all their properties, business confiscated, and they were taken to labor camp. My father was sent to re-education camp. And so I don't view radical communism or Marxism or any of these related ideologies with the same rose-colored glasses that a lot of my fellow citizens do in Portland. The socialist movements there is very, very active, and I would say there's a stronger visibility of them than even like regular conservatives by far. these are primarily young white people, educated. They have no experience of what it's like to live through a Marxist revolution. So they think of it much more in as a nice theoretical idea, rather than talking to people who have experienced what it's like. So that family background and experience that my parents have gone through, and their trauma that they passed on to their children, right, myself and my sister, informs how I cover Antifa. And I think there's like I said earlier, there's a certain blind spot in this country for the far left. They don't understand or know the history of what that can lead to when it goes completely unchallenged. And I want to make it important that I think, I don't think that these ideas should be censored at all, but it's important we talk about it honestly. And right now there's just a lot of propaganda going on in revisionism about radical Marxism.